What I have today is the Seeaudio Bravery. It's a 200-ish, it's actually 300-ish, or about $275 of IMs that was sent to us by directly from Seeaudio. So thank you, Seeaudio, for sending this to us and for us to review. Though they didn't pay us nor influence us of any shape or form to say anything good or bad about this IM, because I tried. This is not the first Seeaudio IMs that I've tried. I tried the Yume, the Kaguya, and the Neo. So I actually have quite a, I know, somewhat controversial comment about the Yume. I think that IM is just, in my opinion, is just bad, because although they have good tonal balance, in my opinion, if they have one of the worst timbre presentation that I've ever heard in an IEM. It's like, so the technical performance, the presentation is just so low res. They just sound very mushy, and no, I don't think their technical performance could support their tonal balance to produce a good sounding timbre, and that's quite controversial somehow. Okay, so this is the Seeaudio Bravery, and they came in at one of the worst times that they can ever came in. They came in exactly the same day as I got my HIBY HE6 right here, and if you consider someone with a new toy, of course they were going to be playing with them. So I spent like 24 hours or something, literally accumulatively about 24 hours modding these, listening to weird shit on these, like damaging my hearing for an extensive, like, on the long run. So, and I did that, and I successfully fixed almost all of the problems here. Even the 9K or 11K peak. We'll probably going to have a video about the mods that I did with these, or the HE800s, or anything else, maybe a ramble, but let's get to this IM, because this is actually a very good sounding IM. This is not Seeaudio Yume, in my opinion. It's far better than the Seeaudio Yume, in my opinion. Well, but then again, at this price point, at around $300 type of price point, there is always one question in a lot of IM reviewers' minds. Are they worth it to get when the Blessing 2 is so close? Should you just like save that extra $70 and get a Blessing 2s, or just get a Blessing 2 second hand, considering you can find one? Because in my opinion, this is the TLDR this is a very decent IEM, and I can easily recommend these. Although, as a reviewer, I would say that accumulatively and overall, the Blessing 2 is still superior over the Seeaudio Bravery. That answers, I guess, a lot of 50% of the questions surrounding the Bravery, Seeaudio Bravery. By the way, this is of course the Blessing 2, and this is the Seeaudio Legacy 4, and this is the Sony IR-M7, and we are going to compare the Seeaudio Bravery with these three IEMs, maybe sporadically in the review. Along, like, when I talk about the bass, I'm going to compare it with all of these at the same time, so it's not going to be the usual format if you're familiar with this channel. So yeah, for build quality, in my opinion, these these are fine, I guess. The build quality is very similar with the Seeaudio Legacy 4. Maybe not a very premium feeling box, I guess, because I actually didn't get any box. Hopefully they would do something like the Seeaudio Legacy 4s. The case here is useful. I guess it's simple. You get these 3 pairs of very expensive ear tips. It's elastic ear tips, although these don't fit a lot of ears, because yeah, if you've tried one of these, you know that these you would always size down while picking these ear tips, and most of us probably would wear like a medium size, and the smallest size here might be too big for most of the users. So I would definitely consider buying another ear tips if you have relatively smaller ears. Although I do have a set of the Elastics ears myself, so ear tips myself, because I'm not going to use these, because these are going to go to the next reviewer and gross. So good thing I have my own Elastics, so I can listen to these as how it was intended to sound like, hopefully. So yeah, the cable is paracord cable. It's not the worst, but this is definitely not the best cable. It's a bit microphonic. I've heard this is also a Hakuge cable, and Hakuge, like the previous cable review that I did, is actually, these actually have a very good construction, very good 3.5mm jack. Although these do have quite microphonics, quite annoying microphonics, so it looks great, but I don't think it's very functional in my opinion. And the no ear hooks is definitely a plus for me, because I don't like actually having those things. So yeah, build's fine, overall's good, accessories good. You can sell these actually, the extra ear tips. They're worth quite a bit of money, so good. Now the sound. Overall, this is V-shape sounding. The tone out, the general tuning, this is V-shape sounding, and they are actually quite a tasteful V-shape, but they do have a lot of the usual V-shape faults, such as it has a very drawn in type of mid-range, but it is still a very tastefully drawn in mid-range. We'll get to that in the when we talk about the mid-range. For the bass here, it's fast, it's punchy, it's tight, although it feels very dynamic driver like when in the punch. However, it doesn't have the excellent, or no, not the excellent, the natural, probably the organic dynamic driver decay. So for example, if we're going to talk about a very well tuned bass armature IM, we're going to talk about the Sony IR M7's bass, especially in the bass. These can create something very dynamic driver like, because when you listen to the M7, you might think that these actually have dynamic drivers inside them. However, they don't. They are the exact same configuration. These are also 4BAs, I guess, if I'm not mistaken. So these can produce a dynamic driver decay almost as good as something like the L4s or the Blessing 2s, and these have actually dynamic drivers in them. And it's very visible, it's very noticeable when you listen to a lot of acoustic bass, or like acoustically, like actual instrument bass. You would notice the more natural decay in these 3 IMs above the Seeaudio Bravery. However, if you mainly listen to a lot of artificial bass, for example, if you listen to a lot of pop music like Billie Eilish, for example, or you listen to a lot of EDMs like Snail's House or Dark Cat or something amongst of those piles of music, I think this would serve the bass very well. I guess it's a very good bass, although it's not the most natural type of bass presentation in my opinion. I guess that's the overall idea of the bass here. Although it's faster actually than all of these. So yeah. The mid-range, I do feel that this can produce a very good or very weighty type of male vocals. Although the female vocals here, I don't feel that they have enough or like good amount of body to the music. It sounds like the female vocals are a bit more withdrawn here. Although it's not withdrawn actually. It's just a little bit pullback if you compare these, especially with the Blessing 2s or the Legacy 4s, because in these reviews I really talk about how I really like the presentation of vocal in these IMs. However, the Legacy 4s in my opinion have a bit better balance in terms of male and female vocals. These do both type of male and female vocal quite well. The Blessing 2s really do females vocals very well. However, male vocals get to sound a bit thin here. These can produce quite a bit more weighty type of male vocals, quite a bit weightier than the Blessing 2. Maybe at the range or like the weight of the Legacy 4s have male vocals. However, female vocals tend to sound a bit withdrawn here. Maybe it's because of that dip in the mid-range where the fundamental tones of the female vocals or the first harmonics of female vocals really should be a bit more elevated there. However, it's not really bothersome if I'm just really nitpicking at the faults here. I think it's a very good presentation of vocals. The Blessing 2 just beats this at female vocals, and the M7 is very good at actually male vocals. However, it's even more withdrawn in the M7 than the Bravery if we're going to talk about female vocals. So yeah, I guess the mid-range is fine. I guess most instrument sounds fine. I guess it doesn't sound particularly weird, or it might get dry, but it's just the BA characteristics, and we're going to go to that when we talk about timbre. In terms of treble region, I think they do have a bit of elevation in the treble region. It's quite different than the elevation in the Seeaudio Legacy 4s. I think the Seeaudio Legacy 4s have a bit more elevation at the lower treble region, and the Seeaudio Bravery have a bit more elevation at the mid treble region. Although these sound quite well extended in treble also. It's a bit more like it's quite a bit more well extended than the Blessing 2s, of course. So yeah, instruments, musics would. If you listen to a lot of orchestra, you would notice that these sound noticeably more open than if you listen through something like the Blessing 2s, or even like the Sony M7. Although I don't think it's that far off a different in that I don't think it's that different in openness, I guess, with the Sony M7 in terms of orchestral music. However, vocal, female vocal, main type of music, or like jazz type of music, I do feel that the Bravery is a bit more open than the M7s. So yeah, I guess that's that. When we talk about timbre, I think these have still distinctively BA-ish type of timbre, sadly, I guess. In overall timbre, I think it's better than the Legacy 4s, because although these have a dynamic driver in there, the BA in the mid-range and the treble is just, in my opinion, the timbre is just too much. It's like it's too BA. It's too dry, in my opinion, here. Against the Blessing 2, I think they do have actually equal amount of timbre. I don't know if you can quantify timbre. I think it has both have their faults and their benefits. For example, the Blessing 2's bass is definitely sound more organic, more natural sounding in because of that dynamic driver. Although with that, it does introduce a bit of incoherency between the bass and the mid-range and the treble. However, the bass here is not very elevated, which actually benefits the Blessing 2 in terms of coherency, because it's not that bloomy, in my opinion. It's not that the bloom of the dynamic driver bass is not very forward, so it actually helps with the coherency. Although these with the 4 BAs, actually it's a bit more coherent than the Blessing 2s. The mid-range in the Blessing 2s especially, I do hear that type of balance armature smearing or like straining quality of the mid-range. Not so much in the Bravery, because it's actually quite withdrawn there. Maybe that's why it's not very noticeable. However, the upper treble, or treble in the upper treble, is much more organic sounding in the Blessing 2s rather than the Seeaudio Bravery, because it actually still have that bit of treble shimmer, I guess, in that region. When we're going to compare the timbre with the M7, I think the M7 is one of those BA IEMs that actually kills it in terms of sounding like a dynamic driver, sounding as organic as possible. Although it has a fault, which is the upper treble region, or in the treble region in general. It does not have the best timbre for BA. It's very noticeable that the bass sounds amazing. It sounds very organic, it sounds very clean, it sounds very thick, very weighty type of bass. The mid-range is also very weighty, very full body type of bass, and then the treble just goes dry and shimmery and BA like type of treble, like, you know, that quality of that shimmery type of rough treble region, and it's quite actually noticeably worse than the Seeaudio Bravery in terms of that upper treble. The Seeaudio Bravery is actually quite okay, I guess. It's not the best, but it's definitely still very good. However, overall, if you consider mid-range and the bass, of course the M7 is going to be a bit more organic sounding, I guess, in terms of timbre. So yeah. When we're going to talk about detail, I think overall the detail here is a bit better than the or noticeably, actually it's quite noticeably better than the detail in the Seeaudio Legacy 4s, although these are actually not known for its detail retrieval, so I don't know it's fair to compare these for just detail retrieval. However, when you're going to compare it with the Blessing 2s, in my opinion, the detail here is actually pretty similar. I know if you first listen to the Seeaudio Bravery and the Blessing 2s, you might have the impression of the Seeaudio Bravery being much more detailed than the Blessing 2s. However, when I actually pass through the elevated treble and the withdrawn mid-range of the Seeaudio Bravery, And I really listened to the Blessing 2s again. I think it's actually a very technical IEM. It's quite also detailed. It's quite detailed also, especially for its price. And I think they have overall similar amount of detail. In the bass region, it's quite depends on what you consider as a detail. If you think that dynamic driver decay is part of the detail, if that weight and presentation, the acoustic bass is what you think considers details, like that contrast of dynamics, you might think the bass here is a bit more detailed. However, if you think that transient response, speed, and the tightness of the sound is what you think is considered detail, I think the bass of the Seeaudio Bravery is going to be a bit more detailed here. For texture, I think because of the elevation of the Seeaudio Bravery, you might argue that these have a bit better texturing. However, with the more natural, more organic decay of the bass of the Blessing 2s, you might feel like these have actually better texture. So it kind of depends on what you're looking at for detail, I guess, in the bass. For mid-range, because this is a bit more elevated in the mid-range, I think it's a bit more detailed here, and the treble here doesn't really bother. Treble timbre doesn't really bother the mid-range here also, because the bass is also a bit more elevated here, and the treble is more forward, and of course because the mid-range is a bit more withdrawn here, it's a bit more V-shaped sounding. I think the mid-range timbre would be, the mid-range detail is a bit better on the Blessing 2s. And with that, the treble detail is noticeably actually better on the Seeaudio Bravery. So I guess the overall treble detail is a bit of a toss-up actually. It's pretty much what you think detail is and which part of the music are you focusing at. So yeah, against the M7, the M7 just beats the detail here. It's overall just more detailed everywhere, like the bass, mid-range, and treble. Even a treble, even with the grittiness at the treble region, I still can hear a bit more information here. In terms of dynamics, these are actually quite dynamic. It's very good in terms of dynamics. It's a bit better in terms of dynamics than Legacy 4s. Although I think the bass region, the Blessing 2 still have a bit of an advantage in terms of dynamics. And overall, the M7's a bit better in terms of dynamics, just overall. So yeah, for speed, yeah, it's fast. This is quite fast. For overall tonal balance, I haven't actually covered that. The winner for just general tonal balance is actually quite peculiar here, because depends on what you're listening to, I guess. I think the L4 is quite a bit more balanced than these. Yeah, I don't think these and the M7 have quite a generally favorable tonal balance, I guess. However, they are actually still pretty good. It's not weird sounding, but although with that V-shaped type of signature, with an addition to that dryness of the BA timbre, that although it's actually handled pretty well here, it's still noticeable. I think it kind of sounds artificial if you really pay attention and you use a very well recorded type of music, for example from Chesky or something. So yeah, because that's it for the review. I think overall all these IEMs are actually very good for its price. The Seeaudio Bravery, even being cheaper than the Blessing 2s, I think it competes there. I still think overall the Blessing 2 has still the advantage because it has more balanced tonal balance, better tonal balance, and the technical performance. Oh yeah, I haven't talked about the spatial presentation yet. The soundstage, this is going to be the smallest. These three actually have similar sized soundstage, a bit wider than average. Maybe in some tracks one might get an advantage over the other, but overall these have generally similar to soundstage width. The separation is still the best. The imaging and separation is still the best in the Blessing 2s. However, the separation in the M7, it kind of depends on how good of a seal you have with these. With perfect seal, it's quite similar with the Bravery. With crap seal, this have the worst instrument separation you can actually find. So kind of depends, but overall I think this sounds a bit more open than these, so I think the instrument separation actually helps. It's actually helped by the openness of the sound here. So yeah, the spatial presentation, I think the Blessing 2 is still superior overall. So as a review overall, although this is excellent and this is very good and this can compete in its price range, the Blessing 2 sadly exists, and overall that is still the IM to beat. However, this comes really close to that, like this close to that. I guess that's it for the review. Don't forget to watch Jason's video. See you next time. Godspeed.